Hello again and welcome to the 28 October 2016 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. I'm your host, Doug Smith, and my guests today are Portsmouth Police Chief Tom Lee and Portsmouth Finance Director Jim Lather. Welcome, gentlemen, to the program.
Oh, good morning, Doug.
Oh, good morning. Thank you.
On the 8th of November, we go to the polls, and Portsmouth residents are going to be asked to vote on referendum question number 8, which is approval of a $10 million bond to build a new Portsmouth Police Station. It seems to me there are two key questions that voters need to know the answers to before they go and vote. The first one is, why do we need a new police station? And the second one is, what are the projected costs and how are we going to pay for it? So that's kind of what I'd like to address today. And perhaps, Chief, perhaps you could talk about the first part. Why do we need a new police station?
Well, the town has actually known that we've needed a new police station for many years. Approximately 10 or 12 years ago, they actually bought some additional land. We didn't own that lot of grass right beside us. Wasn't even owned by the police station. So we've known about that we need additional space for years. And our former town administrator, John Clem, he actually started the feasibility study, which we did in 2015. And people think I just looked at the police station. We looked at the police station, the fire station, and our municipal our public works building. So they looked at the three buildings, and the recommendation from the company that did the study was that the police department has to be replaced. The police station has to be replaced. And they did an extensive study, and for a town of our size and a police department of our size, it should be about 4 times larger. That actual building is it's less than 5,000 square feet. And we would need a police station of more than 20,000 square feet for a police department of our size.
Now, the company that did that study that's what they do for a living.
That's what they do.
They're nationally
yes.
known, I understand.
They are nationally known, and they actually built just locally, they built the Middletown Police Station, and they just finished the Middletown Fire Department. That's what they build, is police stations and fire stations.
Okay, and so they concluded that this current building's inadequate. You talked about, can you give us a little background on the current building? You know?
Well, the current building was built in 1975 for a much smaller police department, about half the size. There was only 17 officers. There was no female officers. And if you think back to 1975, there were no computers.
Yeah.
Even with the time they built it, because I've talked to some of the retired officers, they knew it was too small then. It was actually supposed to have a second story on the building. And they decided to save some money and just build a small station. It has no basement. So when the day they opened it, it was actually very small for the 17 officers that they had.
Now, how many officers do you have now?
We have 35 officers now.
And that includes some women officers
Yes,
as well?
we have 4 female officers, and we have 2 female civilians that work in the building.
Okay.
Now, a small addition was done on the initial police station when we hired the first female officer back in the 1990s. But it's basically a female bathroom that they put in the station. And it's really, it's not acceptable to have, we don't have a real locker room for our female officers.
Yeah. We've got, this of course is just a picture of the outside of the current police station. I think one of the things that was interesting to me was that it's just one story. There's no basement, there's no second floor. And the new facility, at least as outlined, shows three stories in the building, a basement, a first floor, and a second floor, which would seem to me greatly expand the kind of space you guys need.
Oh, it will. And people don't realize that there's a lot of evidence that has to be stored. We actually use trailers behind the building to hold our evidence. And this evidence, I mean, some of these are open cases. It has to be held. Also, some records, we have to hold a lot of paper records by law. We have open cases from the 70s that we still have to hold the paper records for. And that's all, again, in trailers because there's no storage space.
Yeah, and all this is supposed to be in a secure storage space.
Yes. I mean, we do have the trailer that we keep the evidence in is alarmed.
Yeah. I understand I went through their report, and they found some other just structural problems with the current building as well. Can you talk about some of the problems that you have in the current building?
Well,
let me begin. Where do I begin?
Where could I begin? Yeah. If you like a building with a leaky roof, and there's so many problems in the existing building, we're trying not to spend a lot of money on this building. But where they just stuck whatever when computers came along, they put the servers next to the water heater. Everything in the building is just shoved inside it. And the building itself, it's not handicap accessible. So it's, if you had anyone try to come in the lobby to see how small it is, the doors have to be pulled open. Our senior citizens, the desk officer, when he sees a senior, a lot of times he runs out to grab the door because they can't even pull the...
It's hard door to open.
Yeah, it's hard to even open the door.
Yeah.
And many of these smaller things we've tried to fix, but the overall building is in tough shape. And I've tried, again, we've had the recommendation to have, the roof is leaking badly, but we're not going to put a new roof on a building that really should be torn down.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. I think people look at this and they say, geez, why does it cost so much for a building? Well, it's much more than a building. You need jail cells, you need all this. As you were saying the other day, it's kind of like building a small prison, because you need to have all this stuff, and it's got to be secure, and it's got to be able to operate in all kinds of weather and all kinds of other things going on, to include emergency generators and things like that.
Yeah, it's not an office building or just like a home that you think, oh, you could build it for cheaper. It is. There's a lot of costs that go into building these buildings. And I don't know if you saw the news last night, but Coventry is also looking to build a new police station, and theirs is going to be $12 million.
Yeah.
And they're not that much bigger than Portsmouth.
Yeah, so we're certainly in the ballpark of what these things cost. Let's talk a little bit about the load on the police now. Like you say, we've doubled just about in numbers of policemen. What about what kind of calls do you guys get? I imagine just because of the growth and stuff in town, and also just the population in general, that you guys probably get a lot more calls than you did back in the day when this building was...
Well, when the original building was built in 1975, there were 1,500 calls in a year. This was a very small farming community. It's greatly changed in terms of the community and in terms of a society. This year, we're looking to break for the first time 30,000 calls for service, just to show you the increase that's coming in from 1975 to now.
Yeah. And that's why you needed the extra police personnel.
Yes, that's why we've needed the extra police personnel, and we have to have the space to house those officers.
I went on the tour several months ago now of the police station, and I was kind of amazed at the Sally Port where you bring the people in. It was like a small garage, and you couldn't even move around the car hardly. What are modern police departments supposed to have for things like that?
Well, obviously, our Sally Port is not acceptable because you can't get the second door open of the cruiser when you pull the car in.
Yeah, it's so small.
It's so small, which people don't realize.
Yeah.
You need a wider area, because people don't realize the Sally Port, when you bring them in prisoner inside, that leads directly into the holding area for a prisoner. So that's what that is used for. And you have to, if the person has, if there's been pepper spray, you have to have a wash station. There's all these requirements that you have to have for police stations, and our building just doesn't have the space to have everything that we need.
Now, how is that? I mean, are police stations periodically assessed by people on?
They are. We have, unfortunately, we were assessed by the federal government for our juvenile holding facility, and we don't have an actual, it doesn't meet the standard. We use our female cells as our juvenile cell. It's also our interview room. We just have to multi-use on many rooms, and that's not acceptable in today's standards. So you have statewide accreditation, which we also have federal accreditation, and we could never meet the federal standards with our building.
Yeah. The other thing that impressed me, in a negative way, but when I went in there, was you had officers working right behind the servers and the communications stuff, which is making a loud buzz. So I would imagine there are some health issues too in the current building.
Well, it just, again, in terms of space, and those servers that you're referring to, those are the whole communications servers right there for the town. That's the police, the fire, and our rescue, our ambulance. People don't realize that the police department actually holds the computers, the servers for the fire department. So if we lose that, we lose everything.
Lose everything, yeah. Right now, you have separate dispatch, is that right, for fire and
Yes,
police?
we have separate.
And this new building would allow you to
We're going to have
combine
a
it?
combined dispatch, in a modern combined dispatch facility for our police and fire. And this is something the town has also looked at for many years, how to combine this function.
Yeah.
And we'll have civilian dispatchers in that could do both. So this is something that's been asked for many years, could the town do this? And now we're going to be able to do this. And just going forward for the future, it'll be much better in terms of communications. Right now, when you took the tour, you saw the 911 wires, the phone wires are literally coming through the wall in like a closet. We want to make sure we have proper communications for our town.
Yeah, and you know, the idea of having separate lockers and things for women and having enough space, like for example, the shower, when people can take a shower when they come in after a long stint. These are also major issues, I guess, especially with women in the workplace. There is some accommodation you're required to make.
We absolutely are, and by federal law, we're supposed to have equal facilities. Their facilities are not equal. I feel bad for our female officers. They store their winter coats in the shower. And there's a locker into changing area that now we've had to put, because we hired another female officer, we've had to put her locker is like right in front of the shower. It's not acceptable. And they're basically all stuffed in a small bathroom, which is really, it isn't fair. And just on the side in policing, now we're up to 4 officers. They're telling us within the future we could be looking at 40% of police departments will be female officers. They're already up to about 11% now. So this is an increasing trend. They make great police officers. Our women can do the job just as well as a man can. And more women are going into policing, and we have to make accommodations for that.
Yeah. Let me go back to our pictures here real quick, just to show folks what the layout might be for the new one. This was the old one, the old police station, which was right here, which is right here, I should say. And the new layout would be behind that.
Yes.
So conceivably, they would build the new one behind that, and then at some point tear the old one down.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's the plan. Yes.
Yeah.
And this will all fit in our. I don't know if the camera can get in, but this is all fitted. This is basically our existing parking lot here. Would be where the new building's going.
Okay.
And the new building will actually have a lower level, so it's actually going to be 3 stories, although only 2 stories are visible. The first story is going to be in the basement.
Yeah, I noticed that the Sally Port is in the basement.
Yes, the Sally Port's going to be in the basement.
Okay.
And one of the things, too, that we've done is part of this planning for this is we've already done the environmental studies. We've had borings tested so that we don't have those surprises when we go.
That's something you wouldn't think about.
But because we had some funding left over from the initial concept design, we really try to figure out so that we don't have any surprises when we come to the budget time. So I think they've done a really good job of taking a lot of the guesswork out of a lot of issues.
Yeah. And again, from this diagram, it looks like there's not a lot of difference in sort of space, except when you realize that the new building is 3 stories.
Yes.
So it's got at least 3 times the size of that footprint available.
And it's going to have a large community room, which is one of the, from what we've heard, from Middletown, which also has a new community room in their police station. That's one of the most used places of the building.
Yeah.
And this would be in the corner here on this photo. This whole area here would be the community room. They use it 300 times a year for outside meetings. From the Boy Scouts.
And this
the
is
school
brand new,
department.
so there must have been a tremendous need built up.
And we have very little meeting space in town for our citizens to use. And so that's one of the things that we're looking forward to is being able to host actual community meetings in our building and let the public use this.
Yeah.
And also as an access for emergency situations where now EMA is actually in the attic of the fire department.
Yeah.
You know, some of those, when you have a situation, you have a space for the people to address all those issues.
Yeah.
And Middletown also did that, where their EMA command center is their community room. And it would be similar in ours, too.
Really? Okay, I'm part of the EMA. So that's interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's good. Yeah, so I think this is, again, is just a concept.
Yes, this is
it's not exactly. It may not be exactly.
The plans may look a little bit different, and we get suggestions from our residents as I've gone around and spoken to different groups. One of the folks wanted to have where the flags are, if we could put like something for our veterans here, if they could buy like bricks. I thought that was a great idea.
Great idea, yeah.
And so certainly, I mean, that's things like that. We like to have the public input on it.
Yeah. Okay, so it seems to me, Chief, that you got more than double the number of people operating in the same building from when it was built. You've more than tenfold increased the number of calls that you all get, so you're much busier than you were before. Those, to me, seem like certainly a perfect reason for needing a bigger space. And the key is that the new building is 3 stories high, so there's a lot more space in this one than the old one. Presumably the company you get to, assuming everything's agreed, everything's approved, the company you get will be required to have some kind of police department or public building background. Is that?
Yeah, so we've actually issued the RFP this week just to start this process. It's all subject in the RFP to the voter referendum. And it does require that they have, I think, 10 years experience in public safety design, that they have to have some public comment periods of time, so that there'll be a lot of input into this. And this company, too, is just doing the design. They're not actually doing the bidding or building the building, so that will be a separate bid process where, you know, the bond, too, is the max of $10 million. We may not need $10 million, so that's why we're also going through this process, that we feel that $10 million is enough, but once we go through it with the architectural, with the bids, it may actually be less.
Okay, just to close out this first question, which I think you've done a great job in answering, why we need a police department, a new one. What have you guys done to educate the public about this need?
Well, one of the first things we did was we started our Tuesday tours. So we opened up the police station every Tuesday. People can come by, take a look through, and we've had a lot of residents come through and take a look at it. We've also held a fundraiser. The Portsmouth Police Association, which is a separate group, obviously, than the police department, has raised money, and they're putting out campaign signs, lawn signs. I think people have seen them. They're going to take it out in the newspaper. They have little brochures that they've been passing out outside of church and outside of the football games, just to let people know that this is what we need, and we're asking people to help us and support us on November 8th.
Okay, and this is all done with funds raised by this fundraiser?
Yes, through the fundraiser.
Yeah.
And we had a great turnout at the fundraiser. We sold every ticket, and it was at the Glen Manor House, and it was a great event.
It was a great event. It was really a lot of fun. What has been generally the reaction of people that take the tour?
They can't believe how small it is. Most people have never been inside the police station, or if they've been in, they've just been in that little lobby area.
Yeah.
But when people actually take a walk through, they're so surprised how small it actually is.
Yeah. Are you still offering tours?
Yes, we are.
You still do
Yep.
that right up until thanks, Chief. I think you made a good case here for why we need a building.
Thanks, Doug.
Let's turn for a second to the projected cost of the building and how we're going to pay for it. Some people consider $10 million to be high for construction of a building. How do you guys respond to that?
Well, there's a couple things. One is any building that a municipality builds has to pay prevailing wage. So it's not the same as building your house. We have certain requirements as far as what we pay as far as labor. And then just all the technology that's built into this building. One of the things that we've done is over the last couple of years in the planning is we've looked at how we can afford it, and because we have so much debt that we're paying off, that's really part of the reasoning that this is a good time too, so that it doesn't have an impact.
Yeah, let me get to that in a second,
Yeah.
because I think everybody's interested in that part. But yeah, I think one of the obvious things to me that jumps out at me when you think about a police station is you need a cell block. You need places to keep people in a safe environment. There's a lot of things. In many ways, it's almost like building a small prison inside a building. And this is some of the things, as we talked about storage, just record storage and things like that. And it's all got to be secure. It's not just like a Walmart or something where you have filing cabinets full of stuff. It's got to be in a secure facility that's not just secure from intruders, but also from weather and everything else.
That's a great point, Doug. People don't realize how many arrests the police department make every year. Last year we had over 700 arrests.
Wow.
So those are people in that building being held in the station, being held in cells. So when that cell block is a small prison.
Yeah.
And you have to think of it in terms of building that. The actual costs on the building itself is going to be about $7.3 million in terms of the construction costs. But communications, the cost of communications has greatly increased. So all of the computers and the computers for the radios, the whole new dispatch center, that adds a lot on the cost on that side.
Yeah. So that's the point I think that you can make, is that it's not just a building. It's not just four walls and a bunch of offices. Jim, let's talk about the cost of this. You know, I've heard that there'll be no tax increase required for this bond. How is that possible?
Because we've been paying off debt. The town has been very conservative in paying off a lot of debt. In the next couple of years, it's going down even more. So we're kind of replacing debt that is no longer there, so that it'll stay level as far as your annual debt service cost. It will actually still continue to drop, just not at as quick a pace without the police station. And the other part, and I think we have a chart
slide
here.
Yeah.
I think the next slide kind of shows some
Next
debt
one,
service.
excuse me.
So the bottom line shows what would happen if you didn't have the police station, and the top line shows with the police station. So, but if you look at where the top line is now, you can see it's above what the total debt would be with the police station. So that's how we can actually say this does not impact your taxes. And you can see it's still going down with the police station. I know there's always something that the town needs, a new road, other buildings.
Yeah.
So we've really...
So we've got capacity then.
We've got the capacity. One of the things that's interesting that we look at, and when we look at bonding agencies, our debt here in Portsmouth is about $700 per citizen. Providence is $7,000 per citizen. Most municipalities in Rhode Island is about $3,000.
Wow.
Even with the police station, we'd only go up to about $1,000 per citizen. So if everybody, as I said, wrote a check for $1,000, we could pay off all the debt. So when you look at it in that way, it sounds like large numbers, but when you spread it out over the community, not so bad. Still a big number, but it's something that's affordable.
Now, our town, thanks primarily to your efforts, I think, Jim, has a AAA bond rating.
We do.
Now, how does that help us in this situation?
So that's when we go to market the interest rates. We've built our models based on a 2% interest rate. Talking to our advisors, it'll probably be closer to 1.9. So we'll be able to borrow money at 1.9% for 20 years fixed rate. You know, anybody who has a mortgage, if they could get a 1.9, what a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's what AAA, where we would pay maybe another 0.5 percentage point if we were AA1. The better we are, as I said, between the AAA, the town received an award for financial reporting from the National Finance Association. They've made a lot of efforts. I think the council has willing to spend some time and resources to make sure their pensions are under control. They're addressing the OPEB and debt service. So,
yeah. I think you got another slide here that kind of puts in perspective. I think
exactly. Sometimes when people see 10 million, what does it cost? We're looking at annual debt service on this is about $625,000 a year. That's about a pretty small amount compared to the $50 million that we collect in taxes every day. And if you broke it out individually, it works out, it would add about $50 per household tax bill. It's about that's $4.16 a month. 96 cents a week or 13 cents a day. So when you think about it, a new police station is costing you 13 cents a day.
Yeah.
That you're already paying in your taxes.
Yes.
So
it's not like
a new tax.
Yeah. So I really do think when you look at it to that point, you can't get anything for 13 cents a day.
Yeah.
Even gum's 35 cents a pack.
You're right. Okay, so you guys have kind of answered the basic questions, I think. Why do we need a police station? How are we going to pay for it? If we assume, if Portsmouth residents do approve question 8, what's the next step? You've already issued the RFP. Presumably then that can go forward and people will start putting bids in on it? Is that where the next
Yeah,
step
I would
is?
select a...
Yeah, so the bid opening is, I think, the week of Thanksgiving. So that way, if it doesn't pass, there'll be no bids. And that will be for the design and all the bid documents for the construction. And then there'll be another bid process for the actual construction once all those are approved by citizens in the town council.
Okay, and when do you think we might see construction of the new building starting then? Next year?
Our goal would be probably the end of next spring. Or,
Next
yeah,
spring,
so
yeah.
probably that April, May time frame is
Yeah.
probably realistic.
What happens to the old building after this new building is built?
It will be torn down, and that
Okay.
would be the actual parking lot for the new building would be where the old building is now.
Okay, so that's in such poor shape that it's really not worth
It's not worth,
keeping for
yeah,
any reason.
yeah.
Yeah. You had an assessment team in yesterday in the police station. Where were they from? And I'm just curious about what they said about what they thought about your building.
Yeah, well, we were undergoing statewide accreditation. So we had the actual physical assessors in yesterday. And I'll put it mildly, they weren't that impressed with the building. But luckily for the statewide assessment, what they primarily assess on is your policies and procedures. So it doesn't really take into account the building like you do on the federal side if you were doing for federal accreditation, where the building is part of it. So we could never meet federal standards with our current building, but we hope to meet the state standards they were in. And one of the assessors said, "Geez, you've got such a great police department here, Chief. Too bad you didn't have a building to go along with it."
Yeah, yeah.
So they did notice. They did notice our building was not that.
Some
that
major
great.
issues there.
Yes.
Yeah. Once, let's assume everything works and the voters approve that question, would you consider trying to get national accreditation for our police force? Is that something you might shoot for in the future?
Yes, and again, similar to Middletown, where when they got a new building, they were able to go for not just state accreditation, for national accreditation. We would also look to that, and I've actually informed the council of that because they asked me, will we do that? And I think that's one of our goals, would be to get federally accredited. And only 6% of the police departments in the country are.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be really something we're shooting for, you know. I think people need to realize we're becoming a modern town, and we still have some rural roots there, but I think there's a lot more to bring us into the 21st century, and it seems like we're doing that. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining me today. And I'd just like to tell all our Portsmouth residents out there who are watching our show, please get out there on November 8th and cast your vote. Your vote's important. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.